Hello, and welcome to the AAPI GOcast, brought to you by AAPIGO.org. We're nonpartisan and nonprofit pending, and your home for education and safe, responsible gun ownership in the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. I'm your host, Scott, and with me this week, as every week, is my co-founder, Patrick. Say hi, Patrick.
Hello, this is Patrick.
And our founding partner, Vincent.
Hi, everyone. This is Vincent.
Cool. And next week, we'll have a special guest fourth chair, so we'll keep the mystery alive. But for now, it's just us three talking about responsible gun ownership. Okay, just a little bit about the show format. We have a couple segments. First one is what you've been shooting. That's just like light items. If you got something, new firearm, new ammo, new accessory. Go into news. Then we're going to have a little ad break because we need to pay the bills. And then we will be rounding it up with Share Your Story, which is a segment we are going to be doing every podcast episode about stories about first-time gun ownership from new shooters in particular. Vincent and Patrick are in the hot seat this week, but in future weeks, it's up to you. So be sure to email us if you want to share your story at GOcast at AAPIGO.org, or follow us on social media, Instagram, DM us, you name it. We'll share your story and looking forward to it. And then finally, we'll just round it off with light items. What's making you happy this week? Totally unrelated to firearms or anything like that. So it could be movie, book, podcast, you name it, whatever is floating your boat this week. So cool. With that said, hey guys, what have you been shooting this week?
Maybe I'll go first.
Please do.
Yeah, so I have not been shooting anything for obvious reasons of being there being this shelter in place. But yeah, I haven't been to the range in a long time. But in terms of dry firing and stuff, I've got this Smith & Wesson Performance Center 929, this 9mm revolver. It's my first firearm, and I like it. Sometimes I take it out to dry fire.
Yeah, and I know we were chatting offline about laser guided bullets. The term for those things is escaping me at the moment, but it's basically a dummy round with a laser on it. Did you end up picking up one of those?
Yeah, no, I have not actually checked those out. I actually have an Olympic air pistol for the 10-meter air pistol event. So like when I want to work on precision, just use that instead. Yeah, I can definitely see how the laser system would be useful, though.
Yeah, very cool. Patrick, how about you? Have you been shooting anything, buy anything new that's firearm related?
So I'm in the same boat as Vincent, that I haven't been to the range lately, but I do have a dry fire laser cartridge that I've been playing around with. And any day now, I should be getting another dry fire product. So hopefully, I'll have some stories to share then.
You know, I thought you were gonna say any day now I'm gonna get better.
Any day now, every day I will get better, day by day.
That's what we're all about at the GOcast, is improvement every day.
There you go.
Always moving forward. Cool. For me, yeah, it's been challenging to get range time, not necessarily because they're not open, but because it's near impossible to find ammo in California. So that's an ongoing struggle. But I did actually make it out to the Livermore range about 2.5 weeks ago, and that was just great. The weather's perfect if you have some stockpiled ammo from previous months when it wasn't so hard to find and so darn expensive. But yeah, it's a great time there. I got to try out my new R8, which is, for those of you that don't know, is like the 8-round version of the Smith & Wesson revolver series. It's a J frame, pretty cool looking. It's black, all black, and not stainless steel. So it's a lot of fun, and I'm like way more accurate with revolvers than like striker fires from what I can tell so far. So that's been fun. And then like accessory wise, like Vincent, you can talk to this too. We both got bulletproof vests, actually, just for funsies. We could name drop them, but you gotta sponsor us before you're gonna get the brand love. But safe to say, for the life of me, I like this vest.
Yeah, it's pretty comfortable, I would say. A good
No
coverage.
one shot you yet, I hope.
No.
That's good. You could use the airsoft. I think that would be a fun way to test it out, at least. Just to get your parents or a significant other, hey, shoot me in the chest with an airsoft rifle. Let's test this thing out.
Pretty sure you're not going to feel anything, but
probably not. Got it.
And we probably wouldn't recommend anybody do that.
I would not recommend doing that. Yeah, in case you didn't realize, none of us are lawyers here. Don't take our advice. on anything just yet. And also don't send us money just yet because our nonprofit status is pending. But that said, we're going to be hosting a lot of events on our website in the near future. So way more to come on that in terms of education and things you can do as a member of the AAPI Go community. Cool. So let's move on to news. Again, opinions here are our own. They're not necessarily reflective of AAPI Go as it stands. So don't read into anything we're sharing here. We're just talking about the news. We're trying to be the Walter Cronkite / Peter Jennings format here, where we just read it. You guys decide your opinion. But anyway, a couple of exciting stories in the world of firearms this week. First up, it was the Supreme Court came out and said that they'll actually hear a case about New York City's concealed carry laws. And basically, like 7 other states, New York only issues permits pretty sparingly. It's called may issue. So if this case goes in favor of the defendants or plaintiffs, I'm not sure exactly what that would be. Again, not a lawyer. The people who want this thing to get overturned, we'll call them that, for lack of a better term to phrase it. It could have some significant implications on laws in California and some of those other states that are a little bit more strict about who they issue a CCW permit to. So yeah, Patrick and Vincent, any thoughts on that?
Hey, Patrick, how about you go first?
No thoughts? Really? Not even one?
It's hard to know what to expect from this. It's a lot of times you hear something possibly not necessarily exciting, but I guess noteworthy and interesting. But that's what the news that's a reaction they try to get with, every article. And it's not just the news. The Supreme Court's going to be taking a look at this. And I think I'm just going to not have expectations. Yeah, because it's one thing that it seems like they're saying, okay, we're going to pay attention to this, but it also seems like a stretch. At least we're talking about it as a nation.
Exactly. And in particular in California, we all know that the laws of justice move slowly. We've got a couple of pending cases disputing some of the laws on the books, like limit on magazine capacity. Ninth Circuit's hearing an appeal on that. I think the news about that came out, like 6-7 months ago, and they're still waiting for that to actually be heard by the court. And I don't think this case is even set to be heard until 2022. So yeah, arguably, depending on what side of the issue you're on, it's either terrifying news or exciting news, but it's not going to be resolved until at least a year and a half from now. So don't get too excited, but nonetheless, interesting development. Speaking of CCW, we're hosting an educational event on May 11th at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you register at aapigo.org, we'll be sure to send you the information on that. There's also a link to the event on our Eventbrite page on the website itself. Purely information only. We're going to have a good set of folks on there to go over what a CCW is and help you choose if it's right for you. So yeah, be sure not to miss that event, and looking forward to seeing what the turnout is like for this purely virtual event. Cool. Let's see here. Next story on the list this week. Several polls are showing a drop in support for new gun control restrictions. ABC and Pew Research released new polling this week, and one, by some measures, it's showing as high as a 7% drop in support for stricter gun control measures. But yeah, I know Patrick has a very good, robust background in reading through the bullshit of statistics, damn lies and statistics. So yeah, I would be curious to get your take on this. You've read a couple of the thought pieces, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. And I'm actually looking at the source of one of the studies. So this is the 2021 Pew Research Center's American Trends panel. And yeah, the statistics that people are quoting, the 7% drop is in response to this specific question: gun laws should be more strict than they are today. And for the latest survey, 53% of respondents said yes to that. So 53% compared to 60% from a couple of years ago. And that's where we're seeing that there seems to be a drop in people saying that gun laws should be stricter than they are today.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I found interesting about it. And I know we're discussing this offline. The statements can be misleading, but it seems like that at least shows that people are not in favor of more strict gun laws. Doesn't necessarily say much about whether or not they're in favor of existing laws on the books, like background checks or limits on standard capacity magazines, things like that. But nonetheless, it's they take this poll every couple of years, so it's interesting to note whenever there are meaningful changes in the data.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm looking at that research study right now. Another thing that it's a smaller change, but an interesting change still. One of the other questions is gun laws should be less strict than they are today. 2019, it was 11% and a slight increase this year to 14%. Tied with that decrease that we're seeing in people saying gun laws should be stricter, we're seeing a slight increase in people saying that they should be less strict.
Yeah,
Cool.
that is interesting. I think I was reading some interpretation of that data, and it said that it possibly could be correlated with an increase in the number of gun owners within the last year. With an increase of people owning guns for the first time, it's understandable that they could change their opinion on that question specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, and just anecdotally, I only bought my first firearm after roughly 35 years of being alive and not owning one just last year. And before that, I really wasn't following gun issues or gun politics at all. It's one of those things where you start to appreciate it once you have skin in the game and actually experienced some of the laws firsthand. And for more on that, check out episode 0, where you can hear my first time gun owner story. That is in our podcast feed. I'm not going to say it again because it was bad enough the first time. But if you want to have a few laughs and listen to me ramble on about that, check that previous episode. Cool. Rounding out on news, I just wanted to bring light to an unfortunate attack that happened in New York City over this past week. Yao Pan Ma, he's 61. He was collecting cans alone on April 23rd on the streets of New York to support his family. Attackers struck him from behind, basically curb stomped him repeatedly, and he was found unconscious. He's currently unconscious and in a coma in the ICU in New York City. There is a GoFundMe campaign, which we will link to in the show notes. So yeah, just be on the lookout for that. Do some good if you can. Donate to that GoFundMe campaign. Only other news item, just wanted to mention that we launched our site last Monday. It's been a tremendous response so far. 300 plus social media subscribers, number of folks just self-registering to volunteer for the program. So just wanted to thank everyone who's come out in support of AAPI Go. We're very thankful and overwhelmed by the response. And if you want to check a few mainstream articles that were mentioned in, there's a piece on the reload.com, that's or reload.org, I think, or .com. That's a new firearms publication. We're also in the Livermore Independent. Red State did a piece on us, along with the Trace. And of course, check our own blog for more updates on that. Cool. I messed the segue up by going to my story, then to news, and then back. But now it's time for our story. Let's start that off. Our story, your story is a segment in which, as I mentioned before, we're asking for stories from first-time gun owners, and we want to put our money where our mouth is. So this week you get to hear from everybody but me, since I already went. So yeah, Vincent, Patrick, who wants to go first?
Okay. Yeah, I was just turning off my air purifier because it started to...
That was such a cute-sounding air purifier, by the way.
Thanks. It's
It's like my, Zojirushi rice cooker. It just makes a little happy tune when the rice is done.
Yeah, it does remind me of that. It's funny. Yeah, I got it because of the, California wildfires and stuff. And it's just nice to have in general.
Speaking of reasons to own a gun, yeah, last year when the sky turned red and it looked like the apocalypse was happening, that day alone probably saw a spike in sales. I have no evidence to back that up, but that was the most terrifying thing in the San Francisco Bay Area over the last 24 hours. God. But I digress.
So what was the question? Was it like...
So our story, your story, not my story, your story. So we want to hear about your first time story. What led you to buy your first firearm?
When I was a little kid, airsoft guns and stuff I only had one like little... what they call springers, which is like this cheapest form of airsoft gun that you could buy, where for every shot you rack the slide back, but it's like a tremendous amount of resistance because that's compressing the spring that is supposed to push this piston and compress the air to propel the BB out. And as a kid with small hands and not a lot of finger strength, it's like it was hard to rack that slide back. And
I hear have the same problem. Small hands.
Yeah, so as low quality as that little toy was, it's a toy, but you could also shoot your eye out. But anyway, I played a lot with that thing in my backyard, plinking cans and empty bottles and stuff like that. And I spent a lot of time doing that, just mostly point shooting, not using the sights. Yeah, and throughout college, I would say I went to the range just sporadically, maybe once or twice a year, because some random friend of mine or acquaintance would invite me to go with them to the range. And not a lot of my friends are into guns. So it was a pretty rare occurrence. But I think I'm not exactly sure what made me cross the threshold into actually making a decision to purchase a firearm. But I guess maybe I was watching some YouTube videos or something. I don't know. It could have been anything like that. But
Please tell me it wasn't Jake Paul.
No, it was Jerry Michalek, action shooter, and just really impressive feats of accomplishment. Anyway, I realized that I've always enjoyed the kind of Zen aspect of sending a projectile at a target consistently, precisely, and it's fascinating to me, but also, like I said, Zen, like this, it's meditative to perfect this craft of just being highly accurate and precise in launching a projectile at something, I guess. But yeah, and so I went through the process and everything of getting a revolver, and it was a bit confusing at first because I didn't know where to start. But honestly, like, once I started the process, everything just kind of fell into place, because it's like, I think people in the gun community are happy to have another person join the gun owning community. The gun store I was at, like, they're super helpful and understanding, patient, and so that was a good experience. So yeah, just sport. Yeah, I didn't go in with different expectations, but I paid attention to the safety aspect extremely. Yeah, I wanted to make sure I was doing everything right. I made sure to get myself familiar with proper storage and local laws, regulations, and so on and so forth. And yeah, and it's not a source of anxiety or worry. I'm pretty comfortable with it being just here with me. It's stored properly, and I follow the proper procedures to take it to the range and back when the range is open. But yeah, it's just a nice thing.
Cool. Yeah, and I can totally relate about the safety aspect. That was one of the things for me where I was just hyper paranoid of accidentally the gun going off or not knowing when it was loaded. But thankfully, the people at the store that I bought from were really patient with me and showed me how to rack and unrack the slide and look inside to make sure that there was no bullets in there, which, like, that was the biggest barrier for me, because other than that, I was like, oh my God, like, how do I know? But once you get over that hump and then go to the range for the first time, it just all gets into place, and it's not all that intimidating. And at this point, it just becomes muscle memory at a certain point. So yeah, totally relate to that. And
yeah, with a revolver, like, if the cylinder is out, then it's like very visually obvious.
Oh yeah, you'd have to be an idiot not to know that a revolver isn't loaded. Sorry. It's literally a big circle, and you look in the circle and see that the holes are empty, and there you go. But yeah, semi-auto, a little bit more difficult.
Even if there are rounds, like, in the chambers, no, not chamber, in the holes of the cylinder. if there are cartridges
Technical
in
term.
there. Yeah, I need to look that up. I'm sure I know it, but it's just escaping me at the moment for some reason. But even if cartridges are in there, of course, you always point it in a safe direction and treat it as if it's always loaded. As part of the process of checking if it's loaded or whatever. Like, when the cylinder is out, that firing pin is not anywhere near a primer, so it's not some scary thing.
Yeah, for sure. I had to laugh at your story about the having the airsoft guns around. I don't know if everyone remembers, like, T2 Judgment Day, but there's like this scene with two little kids that are playing around with these like sonic Berettas that have no orange tip on them, and they're just like pew, and they just make sounds. Like, I had those, and my mom actually ended up throwing them away at one point because she was like, "Oh my God, this thing looks like way too real." And we had all these like Intertech squirt guns, which, like, basically they look like an M16, but shot water out of them. And there was a very tiny red mark on it. But other than that, they were totally black. And it's amazing that I'm still alive playing with those in the park.
Funny thing.
Yeah, kids
is,
don't have the good toys these days.
Yeah, when I was a kid, like I always wanted the most realistic representations of the actual firearms in airsoft form, including the weight and just like the general appearance. So like an orange tip bothered me, but now as an adult and as like an actual gun owner, I'm just like, I need to first of all, I need to be able to tell the difference myself immediately,
Yeah.
right? This is the real gun and this is the toy, right? Not toy, but toy, but you could still shoot your eye out. Anyway,
A range toy, right?
yeah, no, I'm talking about the airsoft gun, but
yeah,
but also so that it could far less likely be misinterpreted as an actual firearm, mistaken as an actual firearm. Yeah,
for sure. Okay, that's awesome to hear. So Patrick, I don't know if you're gotten up the strength to do your story this week, but no pressure, man.
Yeah, let me do something really quick. So my story is somewhat similar to Vincent, and then I'm coming at it from a like the sport aspect. So my first firearm purchase was a Beretta 92 FS. This was a few years ago after a few years of using a BB gun, Nerf guns, all those things. And the reason why I purchased it at that particular time was because of, I think some gun laws were changing or had just changed. So it seemed like the right time to purchase something. And that was the very first purchase of a few more.
Yeah, that's awesome. That was also supposed to be my first one, but as you can hear on the previous episode, had a little bit of trouble with my first firearm because COVID hit, and then it was down and locked in the store for 50 days because the stores weren't allowed to reopen. But yeah, I eventually got it, so happy with that. It's a great first-time purchase anyway.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, then as I mentioned earlier, we are seeking submissions from the interwebs. So if you want to join in the conversation, we're going to be doing the segment each week. We have 4 from the audience from social media that I'll read off now. So if you want to participate in the next podcast, again, email us at GOcast@aapigo.org or follow us on social media and just DM us on Reddit, Instagram, Twitter, whatever suits your fancy there. So the first story we have is from Eugene. He came from Instagram, and he just wanted to share his short story about buying his first gun. So Eugene writes, back at the end of start of 2019, I turned 21 and bought my first ever firearm, an S&W M&P 2.0. I live in a city and know that my safety is up to me, and being an Asian American, I knew that I could be more targeted for it. I went to one of the only FFLs in my city, completed the 4473. Yeah, I think that's the standard form number for the paperwork, what you need to fill out in order to buy the pew-pews from the feds. And then I went home with my brand new pistol. Isn't that very interesting a tale? But I felt like sharing. I was very anti-gun when I was younger, but as I got older and became more aware of the world, my stance on it started to shift. Now I'm very pro-gun, and I try to get all of my friends into firearms, if not owning them, at least to enjoy shooting them with me. Great. Thank you, Eugene. All right. Next story also comes to us from Instagram, and it is from Jordan. First firearm story. I was never into firearms before my time in the Army, 2010 to 2014 during Afghanistan, and I was attached to the ODA for a few days to help them with some comms, and one of the E5s let me shoot him with let me shoot him Glock 17, which I think that is let him shoot his Glock 15. I hope you did not shoot him with a Glock 17. If so, we take no responsibility for this on the podcast. But anyway, which was way lighter than the usual issued M9, which is M9, that is the military version of the Beretta. I fell in love with that. And when we returned to Fort Carson, my battle buddy from my squad in 167 AR 4th, ID took me to the IPX. Man, there's a lot of acronyms in this one. And we tried different handguns. I'm from California with zero firearms experience, and my buddy was from Idaho, and he'd been hunting his whole life. I'm from Bayview Hunters Point area in San Francisco, and I knew I was getting out of the Army, so I wanted to bring one home. Before I knew all the stupid California gun laws. Editorial. Out of all the firearms at the PX during that time, 2013, the Glock 19 Gen 4 fit my hand perfectly. You're a lucky dog, because we can't buy them unless we're military or law officers in California. That's Gen 3 and below. and editorial from Scott. But now I have multiple AR-15s, multiple pistols in different calibers, and now a family. I use all of my firearms in a defense scenario and laugh at all the politicians who try to infringe on our rights. No comment on the political stuff, but thank you for your service and your story. Oh, next story. Pentultimate story from Glockboy707, also from Instagram, which, by the way, seems to be our most popular social media platform. Hello. I wanted to share my short story about buying a first gun. Back at the start of 2019, actually, this is a repeat, so sorry. I am going to move on to the next one. Yep. Nope, we're good. We're good. Let's see. Final one we're going to read this week is anonymous. Hello, I just want you to know that I really appreciate this group. I'm a private person and I do not know very many people interested in firearms. I sometimes feel like it's taboo to talk about because I'm alone in this. As a first-time gun owner this year, I would constantly see fellow Asian gun owners in line to buy ammo or firearms, and I always wanted a community. I hope to attend the CCW educational meeting and our tentative meetup in Livermore. Great. Thank you, Anonymous. Perfect. Well, I believe that's all the stories we have for this week. So again, be sure to follow us on our website and social media, share your stories that way, or email us at gocast@aapigo.org. All right. Rounding out here, we're almost toward the end of the show, but I wanted to keep the topic light and away from firearms for our last segment, which is what's making you happy. So has anybody seen any cool movies lately, played a game, anything totally unrelated to the firearms world?
Trying to think.
No, but it's sunny outside, and that makes me happy.
There you go. You will have a what's making you happy by going outside after this podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's good.
Skyrockets in flight.
Oh,
sorry, I was about starting to do a karaoke segment there, but we'll just cut that.
Cool. Yeah, as for me, I finally set up my guitar preamp effects processor. It's an Axe FX3, and with some studio monitors, and now I can jam and use different setups and stuff. It's really fun to play around with. Pretty cool. And yeah, I've been really enjoying that. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and for me, I think like top of mind is it was my daughter's first day back to an actual classroom in over a year, so that's a win. She was supposed to go back last week after spring break, but there's like a quarantine rule and we didn't know about it, so we went out of state to visit my parents, her grandparents in Nevada, and so that meant couldn't go to school on time for 10 days, but quarantine is over, and so she got to go back. So that's making me happy on the family front. Lighter item, though, I started playing Yakuza 2 on PlayStation 5, which, if you guys are game fans, can't recommend the Yakuza series enough. It's just basically an RPG set in Tokyo, a fictionalized city in that, and you just run around and it's like a fighting game and you beat up other Yakuza people and experience fun stories and adventures along the way. So I'm addicted to the golf mini game in there, and there's little parts where you can go shoot darts with random ladies, which I didn't realize that was a thing, but apparently that's popular in Tokyo. And just in general, can't recommend that series enough. Speaking of Tokyo, though, Vincent, I have heard that they have the best airsoft community around and no orange tips.
Yeah, it makes sense because real firearms don't really exist in Japan. So people
use that. Even then, it's funny
allegedly.
Because it's actually very rare to get a gun in that, and it's mostly people with like sticks and bats and like picking up bike racks and traffic cones. So that's been interesting.
But I can definitely see like a much stronger interest in airsoft if really that's their only outlet. So
yeah, for sure. Cool. We could pad it out for another 2 minutes here to reach the 40-minute mark, but any closing thoughts? Thank you to our members, perhaps?
Yes, definitely. Super excited to grow this community with everyone, and yeah, it's nice to see other people relate to certain experiences that you might have had or feelings that you might have, and it gives you a reassuring feeling. And yeah, this is a space that, you know, that there is a gap. So yeah, excited.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see the attention that we're getting so far, and definitely appreciate everybody that's listening, that's watching us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for me, it's just been overwhelming to take this idea from just a germ of idea back on Reddit back in March to launching a website and getting this whole community off the ground. So really can't thank the audience enough for making this all possible. It's been humbling and exciting to say the least. And we're hoping in future weeks on the podcast and on the website to really earn your trust and keep this thing going. So really, again, from the bottom of my heart and the hearts of our co-founders, thank you so much for listening. This is the AAPI GOcast, and we will see you next time.